Good day, everybody. Welcome to Real Talk. Real issues seeking real solutions. Before we start the show, I want to introduce my co-host, Sandy Brown. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Today we have a special guest with us, Christina Horvat. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Welcome, ma'am, and thank you for coming on the show.
Very excited.
Good.
Great. We are too.
We are
We're
too.
excited to have you, and we're excited to have the taxpayers of the state of Alabama hear what you have to say and why you are their candidate for governor. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Like you said, my name is Christina Horvat. I am 46 years old. I was born and raised in Alabama. I have been a Republican in this state my entire life, and going through the years growing up, I've noticed changes that need to be made that aren't being made in this state, and so many things that can better the state, for your education, the roads, the health care. There's a lot of different things that led up to it, but as most people know, my husband is incarcerated. He was stabbed and from neglect from the prison system, and it led me down a rabbit hole of research to uncover so much more in this state that absolutely has to change. And we have chosen so many different people to try to get this change, and I feel it necessary for me to step up to do the change myself, for it to actually become change.
A reality, right. And that's horrible. How do you plan to fix our broken education system? And the most important question is, how do we pay for it?
I want to bring a lottery to Alabama. Most states have a lottery that helps their education. Our taxes here are allocated strongly to your more predominant, richer economies, richer areas in town.
Right.
I think state allocated taxes need to be divided equally amongst all schools, but I think the lottery is going to be our biggest thing. We can use it to fund our education system completely. Teachers should be one of our number one priorities. They're underpaid, they're overworked, and there's so many things with these kids that is straight. They have nothing else. They have nothing left. Their recreation centers are closing. Their school activities are not funded, so they're closing them down. We've got to be able to fund this and have people to volunteer on times or have people to be paid. But the lottery is going to be the biggest way to do that. Our education system we're ranked 46th in the state, maybe or in the country, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Our children should not have to pay for the fact that their parents live in a lower income area. If they are a poverty-stricken community, the children should not have to pay for that. Some people were not given the opportunities that other people were, and some people, you hear the argument that, oh, well, he could have done better, he could have done this and done that, and some can, some cannot. And it should not make our children pay for the mistakes of the parents or the fact that the parents were not given the same opportunities and they're doing the best that they can. Our children really are our future, and we've got to put everything we can into them to get it to where they're not going straight to prison from high school or dropping out of high school. We have to give them opportunities, and it's got to be equal across the board, no matter what color, no matter what city, no matter what you do, no matter your income. It's got to be equal across the board.
I agree with that.
Agree.
Our children are our future, and their education is going to play a major factor in how we perceive the future and how we deal in the future.
Yes, yes. And I agree with Christina. It should be split equally so that all these kids have a chance.
I live in Bessemer, and Bessemer City is horrible, and they don't get they don't get the books. They don't have computer access. These books are falling apart. And then you have your higher income cities, and these kids have so many things they can take on their tablets. They can do all this and that, and that's not.
Yes.
I'm lucky. They're lucky that they can be able to afford these things, but the ones that cannot should not have to suffer for it.
Right.
And the public school system and the charter school system should be treated equally across the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now my kids are out of high school now. The last one graduated 3 years ago. But I remember that many times that they couldn't even do their homework. They're like, I don't know how to answer these questions. I'm like, why don't you bring a book? We don't have books. We only can
Yeah.
use them in class, and we
And
have to leave them there for the
that's
next
just
kids.
unacceptable.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Bring home the audio. They have it like on your Kindle. They have it to where it's a virtual book and it's not an actual physical book. And some of that can help some people, but some cannot. They don't have internet at home. They don't have the ability to get on
Right.
the computer. Going to the library is so outdated now.
Right.
And there's only a few computers there. So, I mean, it's not enough to go around. And it's not just our public school, it's college too. Colleges are the cost is ridiculous.
Right.
People are literally going to work to the day they die to pay off their student loans. Something's got to be done with this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Got to be an answer to be able to eliminate the debt for education, but be able to put money back into the school systems, period, all the way across the board.
I believe the lottery is a good choice. From the 48th place in the nation regarding our healthcare system here in Alabama.
The number one thing I would like to do is Medicaid. If you are on Medicaid, I think the income status for that needs to change. Every single person in the state of Alabama should be offered the chance for Medicaid or a certain age Medicare.
Yes.
There are parents out here who cannot afford, their children are on Medicaid, but the parents themselves do not have health care at all because they either they make too much money or their kids have aged out, they're not eligible. That needs to change.
Yes.
Healthcare in the state is absolutely ridiculous. You do not get treatment unless you have insurance. People cannot afford to go to the doctor. We have a higher death rate. We have one of the most industrialized states in the country, and we need healthcare here.
Right.
And making it affordable is, I don't agree with being able to, how do I put this? I don't think we should be making money off of everybody. I think that our health, for us to be able to boost the economy, we have to be able to do so.
Right.
Yes.
We can't live a normal functioning life without health care.
I can
But
attest.
you also
I can attest to everything you just said. 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, my children qualified for Medicaid, but I didn't.
Yes.
Because we made too much money. So I ended up having to get on the charity program at UAB while I fought Social Security to get my disability. And I eventually did get it, and they do cover all my health costs, but they give you a lot of runaround. Like I had to cancel my brain MRI last week because Medicaid's not wanting to approve it. And for adults, they don't pay dental. They only pay 5 prescriptions a month. And I never could understand why they wouldn't take the Medicaid expansion from the government. It wasn't going to cost the state anything, from my understanding.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a prime example of my cancer was stage 3B. So it was already in the lymph nodes. It was nearly stage 4, by the time I was able to get it taken care of, because I didn't qualify for anything. And
The time frame for you to be able to be eligible for the charity program. Every hospital has a charity program throughout.
Yeah.
And to be able to be eligible for them, it's an act of Congress. You got to supply everything from birth. And the time frame to be able to get it is astronomical, and so much more can happen. Your health deteriorates to a point that sometimes it's not treatable anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now I'm one of the lucky ones who, because I have a very aggressive cancer, so I'm one of the luckier ones who wasn't already progressed to stage 4 by the time I could get some help.
Yes, and I'm very thankful for that, because I love you to death.
I love you too. I love you too. But
I am another example of why insurance from the Affordable Health Care Act is too much. It's way too much for me to be able to afford it without putting me in debt. I mean, I won't be able to survive if I have to supply that insurance. Now,
Right.
there are facilities that do low income and based off your income, but like you said, there are certain tests that require you to come out of pocket 500 to 1,000 or more, and that's just not feasible for most people.
Right.
And I'm not eligible for Medicaid because I don't have children small enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My children are all older, and I'm not a candidate for that. So that's got to change. So if you have a child that is over the age of 18, you're not eligible. If you can afford
Right.
$600 a month for insurance, then you're in trouble.
And
And that,
the 20% coat on everything and your minimum deductibles. I have a girlfriend right now with some serious health issues, and she has to cough up $1,500 in visits and stuff before they'll even pay for it. And they pay, I think, almost 800 a month for their insurance for the family.
yes,
Yeah. And she's still having to come out of pocket thousands. She needs a surgery she can't have till she can come up with them. So, and now it's about to be a new year. So they start you all over.
yes.
They drag you out all year till they figure out what it is, and then they start you again the next year on all that money going in.
Yeah,
And more,
that sounds like an insurance scam to me.
It feels like
more
one when you're
facilities are
sick.
coming to Alabama to make it more industrialized,
It
but yet we
feels
don't
like
have
it.
the ability to get everybody treated. And
Right.
people just act like they don't care about the health of the people in Alabama.
Right. You know, healthcare is an expensive item, as both of y'all have mentioned. You know, it's really detrimental to someone's pocketbook, so to speak, for them to have adequate health care. If you were to get Medicaid or Medicare for everyone in the state of Alabama, let me ask the question that most taxpayers will be asking. How do you propose to pay for this?
Look, I want to sit down with the budget for Alabama because I am sure there are things we are paying for that we can eliminate. There will be cuts here on things that a lot of people are already ready to cut. I know that the grocery tax is coming down, which I'm very thankful for because that was one of my big things is lowering the grocery tax because taxes, groceries are just, inflation is ridiculous. Which leads us to a whole other issue with minimum wage.
Yes.
So
Yes.
everybody, my argument always was that minimum wage, if you raise minimum wage, then the cost of living is going to go up to equal it out. And the thing is, the cost of living has continued to raise, but no minimum
Exactly.
wage has not gone up.
Yes.
Nobody can afford to live off $7.55 an hour.
No.
Nobody.
No.
On the federal minimum wage, Alabama needs to set a minimum wage for Alabama.
Yes.
And quit competing with other states. We need to focus on what's here and here only right now.
Right.
So as far as the health care, there's going to have to be cut somewhere that can afford to be cut, you know.
Oh
Certain
yeah.
programs that states
Well-
are obligated to pay and things that we don't have to pay for.
I'm sure
and of course,
there's
the lottery. I'm really hoping that the lottery brings in a lot more and we can, add it to healthcare as well as the education system.
Correct.
I'm sure there's a lot of money from the prison budget floating around somewhere. We don't have half the guards we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prison healthcare is a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Prison healthcare does not need to be to the lowest bidder. And besides the fact that Wexford bankruptcy, they're still Yes Care. It's the same company. All
Right.
they did was avoid the lawsuits that they had. So they're still the same running companies. They're still the same people. Nothing changes. Matter of fact, they just lowered their costs. So prison healthcare is absolutely non-existent. You don't get seen by a physician when you need to be. You're almost at your deathbed before they take you to a free world hospital.
Mm-hmm.
That
Or
needs
give
to
you
be changed.
compassionate
The
release.
prison system does not need a healthcare system that is all about saving their money per se. It's more about saving these people's lives.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I saw something a couple months ago that said in the last 5 years since they went from Wexler to Yes Care that they have made It was either 90 million or 900 million. I think it was the latter, off of Alabama.
Yeah.
So if they're making that type of money, why are they needing to cut costs so bad?
Difference of the money going to actual health care, the money going to actual paychecks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the problem.
And, well, 80 or 90 open positions for Yes Care in Alabama, so they're not paying out that much in a payroll. They've got the budget.
The prison committee, the oversight committee that we were just at, someone made the comment that you're medically necessary or elderly, let the state pick up charges or the government pick up charges for those instead of the taxpayers here, which ultimately comes down to the taxpayers anyway. But make Medicare foot the bill instead of the Alabama taxpayers.
Yeah,
so
I heard that.
When you have somebody that is medically necessary to be on dialysis, or somebody that's not able to roam the streets, let them people out of prison.
Yeah.
That also saves taxpayers money. Medical releases should be a huge thing right now. They're not able to do anything. They're literally just costing everybody money to house them. They're not around their families. They're not around doctors that actually care. So they can be out in the free world getting the help that they need, the health care that they need. And these are people that are never going to be able to be fully functioning members back into society. They're bedridden. They have cancer. It's
right.
so far progressed that there's no help. But we can at least make them comfortable. There's so many people inside prisons with cancer right now, and they're not getting any treatment. So, and some people may look at that as, well, that's just their punishment for their crime. That's not true. Their punishment's being in prison away from their family and being away from their life. They can't provide for their families.
Right.
And then you got the case that some people are completely innocent.
Right.
So, like I said at the rally, it's, some of their crimes are just that they're black, they're Hispanic, they're poor, they're uneducated. This is their crime.
Right.
Because they didn't know how to fight the system. They didn't know how to fight for justice. They didn't know they had certain rights. And when you have a prosecutor that comes up to you and tells you, you're looking at life in prison or the death penalty, but we can offer you 20 years with the possibility of parole, you scare them into thinking that you're doing them a favor.
They did the exact thing to my brother-in-law.
They can't prove that they weren't, they can't prove that because they don't have the ability. Attorneys make a lot of money, and by law, they have a certain requirement they have to fulfill when they are retained. But you're facing a state.
Oh yeah.
And I remember a long time ago, I was in a courtroom, and one of the prosecutors made the comment that you're never going to beat a kid on the stand. Medical has the burden of proof. But if you're really in the legal system and you look, the state doesn't have the burden of proof. You have the burden of proof.
Right.
Yes, you have to prove.
Right.
They don't have to prove you did it. You got to prove you didn't. And it's complicated. It's hard.
Yes.
If you're sitting at home watching TV and you have no witnesses, you live alone, or your spouse is at work, or you're all playing golf or whatever, how do you prove where you were? You didn't take pictures. You were just out leisurely doing your day. Right. And then you have a knock on the door that says you're arrested for something. You have no idea what it is. You're blindsided. And it happens a lot more than you'd like it to. I mean, it happens a lot more. It shouldn't happen at all. But mistaken identity is a lot of it. There's just so many different things that I want to change in the justice system. It ultimately leads back to taxpayers of Alabama. Y'all are paying for this. Right. You're paying for an injustice to bring it to light to everybody in the state of Alabama. Not that I am 100%. I'm huge on prison reform because of a lot of things, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Alabama taxpayers have no idea where their money's going. They just know that they're being charged, and they don't pay it, they're going to go to jail. They're going to lose their house. But Alabama doesn't have to show you. They say they do, which is one thing I want to do. I want to do quarterly open meeting to show where every dime on the Alabama budget has been spent.
Right. And that was one of the questions that I was going to ask you later on, about this transparency. And you touched briefly on the Department of Corrections. There's a lot of deaths going on inside the Alabama Department of Corrections. And it seems like the department is trying to hide these deaths from society.
Oh, they are. They've
Would
stopped
you,
reporting
if you were a
altogether.
governor, would you make a way for the taxpayers to actually see what's going on inside the Alabama Department of Corrections?
Oh, most definitely. Alabama Department of Corrections, I believe that all officers inside, the guards and everything, they need psychological evaluations. They've always needed this every 6
Yes.
months. But they also need body cams on them at all
Yes.
times.
Yes.
Our officers out here on the street have to do this. Why not inside those walls as well? They're still citizens of the state. So they should still be required by law to do their job the correct way.
Right.
There is a lot of things I would change within the prison system as far as there are a lot of guards that are in there that have been fired or they've been caught abusing, things. This is just being brought to light now because people are sick of it and they're telling. And we've got new ways now to find out things that are going on behind those walls. And it affects the taxpayers in every way. But until somebody sees it in their paycheck, until they physically see what it's doing to them and their family, they don't really care about what happens to prisoners or the incarcerated citizens of the state. They want it handled right then and there, and this is my biggest fight. Most people agree that the education and the healthcare system has to change. That affects most people. What they do not realize is the prison system affects them a lot as well. These deaths, they're being covered up. I deal with a lot of the families. Everybody knows I'm an advocate for this. And the families themselves getting phone calls a week later, if then, that their loved one was beat by someone else and they're on life support and they were never notified.
Right.
Yes.
And then they tell you, oh, well, we found him unresponsive from natural causes. That man was black and blue from top to bottom. How was that natural causes?
Right.
Right.
And most men in their
Always.
30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s aren't just dropping dead.
No, they are not, but they're using it as, they're being drug addicts. They're ODing. Okay, well, there's a number of reasons why this is happening. A lot of these are suicide. I'm not going to say that they're not, but these people are getting this drug in the system. How? How you get them into the prisons? I'm not going to say that, other people and incarcerated citizens are not able to get them in, but your guards are getting a lot of them in. And when these men have no hope, their parole board is not releasing anybody.
And they pretty much taken away their good time.
Yes, I actually spoke about that on the at the Prison Oversight Committee. But the OD, so the ADOC is just looking at it. Well, we can blame that. We can blame that. And then they're hiding the fact of no autopsies. We're not doing autopsies. They just died of natural causes. Because they're wards of the state has the right to make that decision. But if that's the case, then why is the state charging us $1,500 to receive the bodies back? Why are you charging us, the families, to be able to get our loved one back when y'all not equal? It's not fair to the families. The amount of money that the prison system was, what was it, $800 billion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As our commissioner stated, that it's a business, and it always has been. But business, of course, has to make money. And to be private-owned prisons, the beds have to stay at a 95% occupancy, or the state has to pay a fine. And that means that you have mass incarceration coming because they don't want to pay that fine. So 95% is all they are allotted to have the bed space empty. 5%.
That is ridiculous.
So it is 100% ridiculous. But these things, unless you have someone behind those walls, you don't pay attention to this. You trust that and I was one of those. This is why it's huge for me. Being somebody that was, I've known people in and out of prison, but they were the drugs, the theft, and, they just weren't living the right life. And I didn't know how they were treated behind those walls. I heard horror stories, and of course you see horror movies and stuff like that, but those movies actually have a reason, because things like that really do happen, and it can happen to anybody. As soon as it happens to someone you love, your whole perspective changes, and then you look at a different outcome. You want different changes. We'll go ahead and get into the prison reform.
Okay.
The whole entire prison system has got to change. The entire prison system. So as governor, my goal, this is what I want for Alabama prisons. When someone goes to prison, first of all, the wrongful integrity unit has to be created. So if someone actually is innocent, we're going to do everything we can to prove that. Somebody has to sit there on the side of the Alabamians who are facing the criminal system to show that they're 100% guilty. Nobody should be on death row completely. I would love to abolish the death penalty. I really would. Because I've always looked at it that you killing a murderer is not less than the amount of murderers on the planet.
Right.
So,
in essence, you become one of them.
Yes, you do. Life without parole, I do not agree with either. I'm not going to say that people don't deserve to stay behind bars for, a lengthy time for whatever crime they committed. But I have to look at it like this too. I have been a victim of sex crimes. I have been a victim of theft. I have been, on the side of the families where their loved one was, brutally murdered. And, as my ex-husband, my children's father was, killed Thanksgiving morning this year. And I understand I've been on all sides of it. But as a human, I have human compassion. But religion has a lot to do with that too. I believe in God, and God is the only judge. But God gives us free will to do what we need to do, and God gives us free will to make the choices that we make. But there's something mentally wrong with someone who decides to go on a killing spree, or they want to do all these crimes. That tells you there's something not right there mentally. So putting somebody who is mentally disturbed or got mental issues at all in a facility with all these, this is where all your beatings and your rage and all this is coming from. They need every single person that gets into the system needs a mental evaluation immediately by somebody who has no other ulterior motive than their best interest.
Right.
Not to put them in a bed to get the money. Every single person, and when they go to the processing center, this is the first thing that they do. Okay, they get their mental evaluation, they get their camp assignments, and then they immediately go to that camp, and they are immediately registered into GED classes if they do not have a GED. And after they've had their GED classes, then they get into a core program. They get into some kind of trade school class. Every single person behind those walls that has an EOS date has to come out a functioning member of society, and they need better second chance houses. They need second chance programs. We need to be able to make it to where these major companies hire felons, so people can actually afford to support their families and provide everything that they need to provide. You're taking away a lot of things that you don't realize is very important to these people.
Right.
You're taking away their sense of their life, their protectors, and then you have people in there they're in there because they protected their family. Does that make them hardened criminals because somebody come in their house and they shot them?
Right.
Alabama has a stand your ground law, but it only applies when they want it to. It doesn't apply to everybody.
And we didn't always have
right
it
now
either.
who are getting beaten and shot and killed their significant other or whoever would abuse them, and they're sitting in prison. But yet you want women to come forward and tell them that this is happening. It's a lose-lose situation in certain areas, and that's not fair.
Right.
It all reverts back to education, and it reverts back to the way the system is set up. The system is not set up for us to be able to live a safe life in Alabama. You're not letting anybody out of prison that deserves to be out of prison, and you're locking everybody up for no matter what it is, and you're breeding rage inside these walls.
Right. And we see a lot of that on social media here recently. There's an awful lot of violence going on behind the fence, and we just have one just recently. Daniel Williams was his name, and he had some atrocities happen to him behind the fence. And this gentleman only had like a 2-year sentence, but he was housed with some of the most hardened criminals within the system. Me personally, I think that whatever their classification process is, these two types of individuals or these two types of criminals should not be housed together. For that reason, because the way I see it, if you have a guy that has a very short amount of time to do, he's going to be focused on getting back out. And someone that's in there sleeping two racks over that has, let's say, life or life without, they have no future in their immediate sight. So, it creates an unsafe environment for that man with a 2-year sentence. And it seems like, from what we're seeing on social media, is that Alabama Department of Corrections is doing this intentionally.
Population control.
Yeah.
But and we've seen something really disturbing here recently. Also, is concerning the missing body parts of some of these individuals that were murdered or killed in prison. That goes back to the transparency issue I was going to bring up. When these autopsies are done, if they're done, and they need to be done. If an inmate dies, an autopsy needs to be done, and then when the family receives their loved one back, they should have an autopsy done also to determine whether or not if their loved one in fact died of that cause.
And then I will tell you that could double the cost. My goal would be to make an outside facility responsible for the autopsy that doesn't have a personal interest in ADOC, and we'll do the honest thing. And if it needs to be done and documented, then both the prison system and the family gets a notification that needs to be somebody, an outsider, doing it, not just there's one autopsy done instead of two, and then you have the same report. But it would definitely be from somebody from the Alabama Department of Forensics, or somewhere in that vicinity, that somebody doesn't have a personal agenda or a connection to anybody in the prison or any financial interest or financial gain from doing so.
Right.
But the state of Alabama has been doing that for a long time. They're just now getting caught.
Right.
Like I said, the prisoners inside are wards of the state, so they're technically state property. When they have the ability to control whatever about this person, they take advantage of that. But I know that I have spoken with several people about this, and of course, his family. I've spoken with his family, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. But just as you were referring to the other one, the 22-year-old who was sexually assaulted and kidnapped inside a prison wall, he was kidnapped. He was held away from his bed for several days, and he was about to get out of prison.
Right.
And it killed him. So things like that, he had to. They missed the count somewhere. He was off in count, so they put somebody else in his bed. They don't have a clue what they look like. They need to be able to look at their badges and see who they are. They need to account for every single person, not just a body where it's at. They need to account for every single person.
Right.
And the classifications, yes, the classifications. But the issue with Alabama, like I said, I've done research on both sides, and because I want to know where the state of Alabama stands, their outlook on it, and trying to find the good in everything. State of Alabama, where organ donation is concerned, if these people die of natural causes, then they feel like they're saving lives by donating their organs. Okay, well, they don't have the right to do that. They don't have the right to make that decision. It is up to the family to make that decision. But since they're a ward of the state feels like it's their responsibility, and they have the right to do so. It will be a law. I will do everything I can to make sure that it happens, that the families have to have, that the Department of Corrections has to have somebody on the family to make that decision. They do not get to make that decision.
Right.
If they are donating them for the greater good, then why are they hiding it?
Right. That would be my question. If there's nothing to hide, why go to such great lengths to keep this information hidden?
Right.
And so that's the thing. I've never understood that, but ADOC doesn't feel like they should have to tell anybody what they're doing.
Well, they're wrong.
They are. If they were doing it the right way and they did have the right thing, it could be a great thing. Organ donation is absolutely, again, revert back to healthcare. You
Yeah.
cannot afford to need an organ.
I
You absolutely cannot afford one. If you're on the donator list, I mean, if you're on the organ list, it's ridiculous.
Boy, you keep touching on some personal stuff, Christina, because my niece's mother, I still consider her my sister-in-law, is about to start dialysis. She's a juvenile diabetic, and her kidneys are shot now, and she's on the transplant list for kidneys, and she's only 30-ish. There's listeners out here who have ever thought of donating as a live donor a kidney. Please reach out to us, because you could save a young mother's life. Sorry to
Yes, most definitely.
throw my personal agenda in on your interview, Christina, but it wasn't planned. It just came up.
There are, my uncle was an organ donor, but he was murdered. So they could not use his organs. Somebody who was killed tragically, they cannot use their organs.
Oh, I had to take myself off the donor list because the type of cancer I have never really goes away. It just lays dormant. So I can't donate anything anymore. It was
See, there's a lot of different things now because people on their IDs, they're organ donors, and now they're not putting it back on the IDs because they're scared. They're letting their families know, and that may be the better way to do it, is let your families know that you want to donate your organs if you're able. But so many people are scared that they're going to get killed for their organs now because we're living in a horror movie right now. The state is literally, we could write a documentary, we could do a documentary on the state of Alabama, the truth, the horror stories of Alabama. And I want to change that in every way. Everybody should feel safe. You know, most crimes of theft are crimes of opportunity. You know, what mother wants to go to prison because she's stealing food to feed her family?
Right.
Why is she punished worse than somebody who killed somebody? The sentences are not equal across the board, and they need to be. Prisons are necessary.
They are necessary, but rehabilitation is definitely necessary.
Yeah.
We need these men coming out better than what they were when they came in.
Department of Corrections means they have to correct the problem.
Right.
And there's nothing being corrected.
Right. And today it's become the Department of Corruption.
It is.
Yes.
Which is sad to make it more public than what it has been over the years. These guys, when I first started doing the advocacy, I was told that you're not going to get this done and blah, blah, blah. And we've made it national news now because of social media. We have the ability now to get more things out to the public, which is what I'm hoping we do with this podcast. I want things more public for people to understand. It affects you. It affects you, even if it's indirectly. It affects you. And pray to God one day it doesn't directly affect you.
Yes.
Right. And the taxpayers of the state of Alabama should be on their feet right now, given everything that's going on and everything that's being put out on social media. You know, society sees this. They see it in the news broadcast, and they see it on social media. And the taxpayers should really be, really upset about this. You know, the money is being just thrown away, and, burdens, the extra financial burdens that's being levied against them to maintain this ineffective system, the Alabama Department of Corrections. You know, that's a real burden on these families, and they should be standing on their feet saying, we got to have a change, and we need it now, and we need somebody in there that's going to give us this change and stop beating around the bush, so to speak, and let's make this happen. And that's one reason I had you on the show today, Ms. Horvat, was to tell the taxpayers what your views are and how you plan to put the things necessary to bring about this change.
There are so many different things I could do with $1 billion that they're using on these prisons. That could have went to healthcare. That could have went to education. That could have went to repairs of our roads. That could have went to a lot of different better places.
It was supposed to go to our children and our health care because it was the COVID money and the education fund money.
Building new prisons is never going to be the answer. The problem's not the facilities. I mean, these buildings are dilapidated. They're literally falling apart. They need to be fixed. Yes, they do. But there's so many things. These incarcerated men and women, they need to be self-sufficient as well. I think that we need to go back to, we can't, you can't force somebody to do any kind of free labor jobs inside these walls. But there are so many who want to do things and do better so that they have a better chance at coming out of prison. I think that the incentive good time has got to come back because Alabama Department of Corrections made a mistake. Nobody else should have to pay for that but them.
Yes.
That one person that made a mistake and they let him out of prison when they shouldn't have because he lost his good time by doing what he did. Then he escaped and he killed an officer. That should have never happened because that one person should have never been allowed good time for the time he did his other crime. Right. So every single person behind those walls should not have to pay for that. You have a lot of people behind those walls who have no victims in their crimes. They are drug crimes, they're property crimes, they have no physical victims. I'm not going to say that we don't have financial victims because somebody's ultimately paying for, whatever happened, but things like that needs to be corrected. And you have somebody that's a class 2, level 2, work release. They can go to these camps for work release. These people they're ready to come home, and some will never come home because there are people in work release that have their way down. They've shown the system that they're not a threat to anybody, but we can't let them out on the street. Right. That's got to change. The classification laws have to change. The way that they classify these men and women women are, everybody's going to the same place, but the men, if you got capital murder, okay, well, you're putting all these at Holman, most of them. You got Donaldson and Limestone, where you got lifers that, your level 5 prisons. You should not have anybody on a level 2 classification inside those facilities. Right. So there are a lot of things that I would change to make that happen. But a facility that has so many level 5s is asking for more trouble because you're not treating these people in any way, form, or fashion, any health care. They have no education. All you're doing is, you committed this crime, you're never getting out of prison. We're going to throw you behind these walls. And so if you're locked in a cage all day, or if you're behind these brick walls with, inefficient food, the food is absolutely ridiculous, not even meant for human consumption. There's just so many things that I would make this public information. I would make the public aware of how our citizens behind those walls are treated. It will be, so the money is there to fix things. The money's just got to be put in the right places, and it's got to be put somewhere by somebody who actually cares about the state of Alabama and not just certain people's reputations. Right.
I agree with that.
I want to change how the views of Republicans are in the state. Parties should not matter. Democrats are not my enemy. Independents are not my enemy. None of them are my enemies. We have to unify together. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, you're a human, you're an Alabamian, we all have a common goal. We want what's best for this state and our families. We want to be able to provide for our families. We want to be able to protect our families. We want our families to be able to afford health care, education. We want them to be able to have a normal, functioning life. And until we all unify together, that is never going to happen. You got so many people who are arguing over this and that. Your gun laws, your transgender laws, and things like that. That's a whole other topic. But there are certain things. And everybody asks me on my point on abortion and things like that. You want to know my opinion? I'm going to tell you my opinion. But my opinion may not be what's the greater good for Alabama, and that's what I will set aside and focus on for the state of Alabama. Right. You've got to put personal opinions and personal beliefs aside for what is the utilitarian point of view, what is the greater good for the group, what benefits the state as a whole.
Right.
And what my goal is.
Right. I agree with that.
I do too. Because everybody believes different. There's different religions, and that's okay. It's okay to be different. And I'm glad you mentioned that you don't want your beliefs to dictate how what's best for the state because and I'm saying this as a Christian, but a lot of times there's Christian agenda pushed to make laws. Not everyone is Christian.
But that also reverts back to the fact that you can't have the laws, you can't have the Bible or Christianity in the courtrooms until it benefits them.
Right.
Right.
You took the 10 Commandments out of the courthouses. You took prayer out of school, but yet, why? That person has the right to freedom of religion. It's their choice.
Right.
Everybody has the right to practice their religion and to pray to whatever God they believe in.
Yes.
Everybody has that right. Nobody has a right, but nobody has a responsibility to uphold that.
Right.
We got to fix that. We have to fix that. If somebody wants to, do their whatever the religion calls for, they should have that right. 5 minutes of every morning, Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. You took that out of schools because it offends one or two people. Okay, well, those one or two people should have the right not to participate, but the other 45 should have the right to participate.
Correct.
These people, you're taking our rights, certain rights away because it fits the personal agenda.
Right.
We've got to get back to the way things used to be in old times, per se, but we also have to progress to the way we are now in the 21st century. We've got to stop. Alabama should not have a right to tell me what I can and can't do with my money as far as the lottery. If I want to buy lottery tickets, why am I having to travel across the state lines to go do so?
Right. Or with our bodies.
Let's keep that money in the state where it can do some good.
Yes.
There's not just the abortion issue.
Other states. Look at these states. When you ride through states with lotteries, they may have a few potholes here and there, but we have earth missing in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Yes,
I've actually called my
damage to
county.
vehicles. Like my vehicle would disappear if I do not swerve and go around this massive hole.
I've had to call my county before because we found and I'm not talking about a pothole. When I tell you, you could look down 15 feet of nothingness below this road, I am not exaggerating. I've never seen anything like it. It's near rivers and creeks, so I guess it washed out under the road.
I'm sure.
But now they did come immediately and fix it. I'll give them that. They came and pumped it full of concrete or something, but...
Well, let's see, ours over here, I actually rode through one of the streets in Bessemer, and I busted 2 tires.
Wow.
And you only have one spare. So how do you handle that? How do you do that? How do you function with 2 busted tires because of a pothole in the road? And it actually stopped me from doing my whole business the next day because I had to wait to get a tire because it was late at night. I couldn't get one. So I had to wait till the next morning, and it changed my whole day. I had things I had to do, and I had to leave at a certain time, and I had to leave before businesses opened. So when I called the city, it took, 5 or 10 more people complaining before they actually done something about it.
Oh, wow. Now, had it been just a pothole, they wouldn't have come, but this one was literally like the road was going to collapse if they didn't come do something.
Yeah. But that's the thing, it shouldn't get to that point.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
Our roads are huge. And trains. Lord have mercy, trains. Trains have got to stop blocking roads. Emergency vehicles cannot get through. They're having a detour. I have to detour, I would say 3 or 4 days out of a week just to get to my house. And I have to go to a whole other city to bypass this train.
Oh, no.
Emergency vehicles, and this happens all the time. One of them's actually been fined a long time ago on Highway 150, that railroad track. They block it for so long. And I understand that, we have US Steel, US Pipe, and all these places where we have to load and unload and everything. It takes time. And we need to shorten these trains that are doing so. You cannot block the city roads from emergency vehicles getting back and forth. This is people's lives.
Yeah.
I understand that business is necessary. I do. I understand a lot of businesses are necessary. But these businesses should not cost us the lives of our citizens here in Alabama, and it should not cost the taxpayers more, and especially when the taxes are not going where it needs. The goal is to show the taxpayers in Alabama where every single dollar of their money goes and show that it's for the better of Alabama, not just to fatten somebody's pocket.
Well, Ms. Horvat, we thank you for coming on the show today, and you brought up some really good issues and some good solutions, I believe, for the taxpayers of the state of Alabama. We support you, and once again, we thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And you guys will be seeing a lot more of me coming up this next year and the next couple of years before the election.
Good. You'll be seeing me too, sis.
You have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today. That was interesting to hear from Miss Christina Horvat, and hopefully she will fill the position of our governor here in the state of Alabama in the next election. Thank you all for watching this show, and thank you for your continued support. Have a great day, and Merry Christmas.